Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see so many of you here to listen to us speak this afternoon. I am very happy to have been invited to speak specifically about my experiences and hopefully the successes that I've had in my career as an arts administrator, first in Washington, D.C., and then in Lawrence, Kansas, and now where I am in New York City, as you've seen with Lincoln Center. My theme will be the power of the arts as an agent of change, as you just heard, and that is happening through risk and innovation. And I thought it might be helpful, first of all, if I were to mention a little bit of my background so that you would be able to understand what my influences are. There is a significant concept called the power of one, which is an important influence in my life. Creating and implementing new ideas within an institution can be very difficult because there is a self-preservation instinct that resists against engaging wholeheartedly in the unknown. It is in our human nature to avoid taking large risks. But ironically, what moves us forward is when someone takes that risk and is successful and others join the risk taker to form a formidable community. As a young woman, in Washington, D.C., I worked first with one of the most powerful families in America, Senator Robert Kennedy, where I worked as governess to the children. There were 11, and I had 9 of them to take care of, and then Senator Ted Kennedy in his Senate office. The importance of this experience comes from what I learned from them, that it is essential to be true to oneself and to be of service to others. My path has been through the arts. After moving from Washington, our nation's capital, to the heartland of the United States, Kansas, I became the artistic and executive director of the Performing Arts Center at the University of Kansas, the LEAD Center, and had the opportunity to search for music, dance, and theater performances from around the world to bring there. I presented traditional performing arts as well as cutting-edge works. Sometimes I found myself in Brazil, France, England, Taiwan, Japan, New York, to mention a few. But I never had the opportunity to come to Korea until now. This is my first visit here to your country and to your city. So why am I here? I'm a longtime board member of the International Society for the Performing Arts, and every year we meet in a different part of the world. It is a network of leaders who come together to share ideas that inspire us to be innovative in our work. In the past, we have been to London, São Paulo, Brazil, Durban, South Africa, to mention a few. This year, we are in Seoul, which speaks to the heart of my talk today. Seoul is a city that breathes innovation. I'm pleased to be here to engage in this opportunity while attending the International Society for the Performing Arts Congress, where many of its 400 performing arts members will be here in your city to experience the culture. But first, my story. Moving from running a theater in Kansas to New York was a challenge, not because I was moving from a university town to one of the most dynamic cities in the world, but because I was about to become the executive director of the most important performing arts resource across music, dance, and theater in the world, the New York Public Library for the Performing Arts at Lincoln Center. And I'm not a librarian. I am an arts administrator and artistic director, presenter of the performing arts. The board of the New York Public Library specifically requested that the new executive director be someone who knew the arts community in New York. I almost canceled the interview the night before I was supposed to meet with people. I was not a librarian, and I could not imagine how I could be effective leader in that community. However, when I arrived at the meeting with the vice president of New York Public Library and other high-level officials, I was asked questions about the kinds of exhibitions I would create, the kinds of performances I would curate in the 200-seat theater, and whom I knew in the New York community working in the arts. Luckily, I had visited New York very often, and therefore I did know the performing arts community, so they decided to hire me. During the meeting, I was intrigued when asked about my feelings about censorship. because I spent a great deal of my time in my Kansas theater fighting censorship. For example, in 2001, just after I had gone there, I presented the choreographer Bill T. Jones. I learned that his new work would deal with controversial issues that might offend our audiences. I made 40 presentations to the city leaders, community groups, about the intent of the work before the arrival of the company. This effort brought the community together, and they understood and appreciated the intent of his work. And as a result, everyone stayed in their seats after the performance to listen to the choreographer and to speak with him and have a personal interaction with that choreographer, as opposed to it being a negative experience. In Kansas, a large family often protested our performances with negative messages on signs. They congregated wherever there might be a large crowd. It didn't make any difference what the content was. You can imagine the shock and distress this caused patrons who wanted to walk into the building. I developed a mantra, which I said from the stage each time this group presented themselves outside. To a crowd of 2,000 patrons, I declared from the stage that the protesters had their freedom of expression outside, but that we had our freedom of expression inside the performance space. The mantra went like this: the artists and the staff dedicate this performance to respect for all people, no matter what race, no matter what religion, no matter what sexual orientation. I knew the words would help, but what surprised me was the level of emotion. People stood, they clapped, they yelled in great joy because they felt as though that kind of bad thing had been taken away. I learned from that experience that the power of one is a very important message to use. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Thus, the concept, the power of one. One takes the risk and brings others along to form a strong community. Speaking of taking risks and jumping into the unknown, I was hired in 2000 at the Performing Arts Library, and my mandate was to make the place live by expanding its purpose. In other words, dynamic, energetic, as if the building were a living, breathing entity. Since you may not have been there, I want to describe the makeup of the institution. The New York Public Library is a not-for-profit institution with 87 branches and 4 research centers. There's the Schomburg Center for Black Culture, the Science Industry and Business Center, which is on Manhattan Avenue, Madison Avenue, the Humanities Building, which is at 42nd and 5th Avenue, and of course the Performing Arts Library at Lincoln Center, where I am. So, the library was in the process of being renovated when I came in 2000. We were to move back into Lincoln Center in September 2001. But given the events of September 11th, 2001, when the World Trade Center was destroyed, you can imagine the challenge of moving technical equipment, furniture, and over 9 million materials back into that building. The city was in chaos, but we managed. The next step was to make the building live, which was my job, and I took advantage of the fact that there is no place like the Performing Arts Library, and I began to promote 3 pathways: performance, lectures, and films in the theater, exhibitions that changed approximately every 4 months to safeguard the original materials, and of course, the extraordinary collections that we house. More than 25,000 people walk through the doors of the library every single month. I spend many evenings in the New York dance, music, and theater communities, and when I introduce myself as the director of the Performing Arts Library, invariably someone will take me by the hand and say that this is their home, the place where they go to improve their skills through the collections and original documentation that we provide. And this, of course, makes me very, very proud. When many people hear the word library, their frame of reference is the kind of place where books line the walls and one can borrow CDs and DVDs, as well as the books. As I mentioned, we have those materials, but a 21st century library needs to be so much more than that. To explore that goal with you, I want to mention one major challenge and two projects that pulled the performing arts library into the international sphere and began to expand our own mission. First, the challenge. A major monetary threat reared its head in 2008 with the stock market crash. I lost 50 employees through attrition and reorganization. While the threat of layoffs hung over us, I sought advice from my then executive coach, who's a very prominent publisher of the New York Times. He was the executive coach. And he said, and I asked him because he had had a lot of experience with downsizing his staff. He gave me 3 pieces of advice, which to be transparent, tell the truth, don't be afraid. I spoke to 100 employees, telling them that I did not want layoffs, that I would work to keep from having them, and would help anyone relocate who wanted to leave. Because I was transparent, I received a round of applause in spite of the potentially bad news. Transparency, truth, and courage. Now the first of the 2 projects I want to talk about that jettisoned the library into 2 global networks. In 2009, many Eastern European countries were celebrating the 20th anniversaries of their revolutions, like Poland, the Czech Republic, Hungary, Romania, Slovenia, and Slovakia. That 20th anniversary gave me the opportunity to invite the cultural councils to think about those artists from their countries who had attracted the citizenry underground to perform. Those performances in turn engendered enough fervor to incite the people to revolt against the tyranny of their governments. As a result of our efforts, the performing arts presenters invited these artists who were funded by the cultural councils. The artists were then presented in their New York venues. My part of the agreement was to create a website and to present a festival entitled Revolution Through the Performing Arts, as well as a major exhibition featuring photographs, memorabilia, music, theater clips, depicting various revolutions during that era, and publicity for the entire festival. One night, I found myself in my black outfit at 11 p.m., waiting to get into the club Le Poisson Rouge, standing in line, waiting to see the bands reenact performances of protest as they did in 1989. I received my wristband because I had to prove that I was over 21, and then wandered in to see projected on the wall behind the Hungarian band the words, "We will fight for freedom, we will die rather than live in tyranny." Those are the words that they sang during that period of time, which was a very brave thing to do. In total, there were 23 partners and over 50 events related to this topic. After a performance another evening by 5 performers from Poland, called the Theater of the Eighth Day, and when I asked her the question about weren't they afraid of the police, the actress in the group replied that martial law was so terrible that she would have become a terrorist if she had not found an outlet through acting. Again, I was reminded of the power of one. The second project occurred in 2010 when I met the Consul General of Ireland and the movie actor Gabriel Byrne, after learning that the Irish government was planning a year-long festival in the US entitled Imagine Ireland. I wanted the library to be part of the festival because we saw a great link between the 2 countries through the performing arts. We created a major exhibition entitled Ireland America, The Ties That Bind, that explored the ways in which Ireland and America influenced one another in dance, music, and theater. For example, the musician and chief of police in Chicago demanded that every one of the people who joined the police force also had to be able to play Irish music. Our goal was to explore the culture of Ireland through the auspices of the entire library. More than 115 programs were developed throughout the branches, including step dancing, Irish language lessons, and theater readings. Cabaret events were a great hit in our library, and public programs in the theater were sold out. In addition, we worked with the Irish Film Institute in Dublin to create a festival of documentary films about Ireland. The end result was a great many opportunities for Irish Americans to celebrate their roots, and for those who are of other cultures to be able to learn about their neighbor's culture. The Ireland Project is an important example because large institutions tend to focus on projects within specific units with few opportunities for crossover interactions. The Irish Project provided a template for the library's leadership to replicate that model. It is also interesting to note that Ireland was experiencing a major financial crisis, but continued to provide almost $5 million in support for the National Imagine Ireland project, of which $300,000 was granted to the library for its programs. They believed in the power of the performing arts to drive economic development in Ireland. Neither the revolution nor the Ireland Project could have occurred without significant funding from individuals, foundations, in the case of Ireland, the Irish government. These two examples are meant to point out that a library in the 21st century is much more than a holding place for our creative history. It is a dynamic spoke of the wheel, a place of innovation, and that is a new role for a library. I know that these concerns, how to stay current when technology changes, how to remain innovative and to lead others in your field, remain relevant to you here. You have always been thinking about innovation and creative solutions in your cities, your government, and your businesses. While other governments that have traditionally supported the arts are cutting back on support, funding for the arts in Seoul, I am told, has tripled in the last 3 to 5 years. This illustrates that your government and your business partners understand the power of the arts, and I congratulate you for your vision. You're very lucky. While struggling to determine what our vision might be within the library, I happened upon a bit of serendipity. I was invited to speak in Paris about the role of the arts in an interdependent world. Ben Barber, a political theorist, became concerned about the prejudices that were increasing among different cultures, while the country was becoming more and more global. In 2003, he gathered political, religious, cultural leaders in Philadelphia in several forums to discuss this issue and to sign the Declaration of Interdependence, along with the city's mayor. The next year, the group expanded and met in Rome, then Paris, Fez, Mexico City, Brussels, Istanbul, Berlin, last year in New York, and this year, as you can see, it's going to be in Los Angeles in September. You should all try to come. In 2005, I was invited to join this group in Paris and was asked to speak about cultural interdependence. It became clear that the arts, in great measure, provide the one safe place where we can come together as a group and experience a performance. We come with our own set of values. Let's say that we leave those values at the door. We participate in the performance that urges us to rethink those values. Our values are shaken up as though our thoughts were a kaleidoscope. So we leave gathering our values, and just maybe we have learned something new, something that will allow us to think differently about what we call other. That, in a nutshell, is the power of the arts. This second was obvious to me, but resonated with some of the great minds attempting to find ways to engender communication across cultures. I will admit to having my doubts about this power of the arts until we met with a group of youth who were joining us from all over the world in Mexico City in 2007. Two of these young people, April from Israel and Ronnie from Palestine, said that they were going underground with their friends to form plays about the hazards of hatred and the benefits of communication that leads to peaceful coexistence. They said that when they reached our age as adults, they would assure that in the future there would be communication between the two worlds, Israel and Palestine. The arts became a creative tool for them to communicate about difficult issues. The power to provide that hope, to provide that information, is the power of the arts. And the Library for the Performing Arts is where the performing arts live. I recognize that you have a very creative city with many performing arts centers. I know that you too recognize the power of the arts and culture. So I'm especially pleased to speak to you and to be part of the endeavor that uses the arts to create communication across cultures and attempts to find ways to improve our global society. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. It's been a real pleasure to share some of my experiences with you.